It's time for another book review blast! Thank you to my patrons. I really appreciate all you do to support the channel. So it's been a while since I did a book review blast. Every once in a while I get that itch to cover some of the books that I haven't done reviews for, but that I don't really think warrant maybe a full review, at least at this point in time. Make sure that you like the video if you enjoy it, subscribe to my channel if you want to keep up with my future content, and let's get right to the book review blast, guys. We're going to start with a nonfiction book by Thich Nhat Hanh. If you're not familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh, he was a Zen Buddhist monk, recently deceased. He passed away last year, I believe it was. And one of the books that I have heard everybody say is essential to read from him is The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching. It was okay for me. It wasn't great. There were a lot of really good morsels of truth to be found in there. I'm a firm believer in embrace truth where you find it. And there were a lot of great little bits of truth sprinkled throughout this book. And I don't think I was quite prepared for what I was actually getting in this book. I think I went into it thinking it would be something different. I've read other books by Thich Nhat Hanh that were very appropriate for your average everyday person. And I felt like this book was so steeped in the Buddhist faith as a religion that it wasn't really practical for most people, in my personal opinion. Like I said, there were things that I gleaned from it that were really important, I felt, but overall, I felt that it was just not intended for me as its audience. It was very steeped in ritual. It was very steeped in you should do this, you shouldn't do this, prohibitions versus things that you should do. And honestly, that was a little bit triggering for me, coming from a strong religious background as I have, getting back into those rules and regulations, and I'm like, yeah, that's not for me. So all that said, I thought it was a decent book. It was okay, just not one that I would ever read again, and I don't think I would recommend it to everyone. The next book I want to talk about is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This is another book that I've been looking forward to reading for a long time. I'm a huge fan of the Netflix series, and I knew going into it that the book was different than the show. I knew that right off the bat, so I wasn't surprised by that. It wasn't nearly as good as I thought it would be, as I had heard it would be. It really wasn't scary at all, and to be honest, the ending did not land for me. The book was interesting. It was a fun story throughout most of the book, but it just didn't click for me, especially the ending. The basic premise of it is that there is a doctor who specializes in paranormal investigations. He goes to various different haunted houses and locations to see if he can encounter any strange phenomena. And he recruits 4 different people to join him to spend a week in this house known as Hill House, off in this completely deserted area outside a very small town. It just sits off to itself. And there was some weird phenomena that goes on, but it didn't have near the emotional impact or the fright-inducing material that I thought it probably should have. And I was probably spoiled by the show. I think that this is one of those cases where the TV show is better than the book. And I mean leagues beyond the book. It's just a fantastic show, and the book just was not all that. So I would not recommend it really, unless you really want to read the book that the show is based on. I recently started rewatching Hill House. I mean, it is October, right? And I'm just absolutely loving it just as much, if not more, than before. Watching it with my daughter, and we're enjoying reliving some of the captivating moments from the show. So, the next book I want to talk about is The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. This book is easily going to be one of my top favorite reads of 2022. It's going to be one of those books that I come back to and I think about over and over and over again. It was just really amazing. This is my first entry into Clive Barker, and I am so impressed that I will continue reading Clive Barker. Maybe not all of them, who knows? We'll see which ones land for me and which ones don't. He can be pretty divisive. He is very unconventional in many ways, and I think that is good. I think that is in his favor. If you are not familiar with The Hellbound Heart, it is the book that Hellraiser was based on, and it follows a man named Frank Cotton who is steeped in a hedonistic lifestyle. He finds a mysterious puzzle box that he is so intrigued by, and he keeps twisting it and turning it all different ways. He has read up on the history and lore behind the puzzle box, and he's assembled different ritualistic accessories to be around him once he opens the puzzle box. And he is at a point in his hedonistic exploration where he is bored and he wants something new and fresh, and he has heard that the priests that this puzzle box will summon, known as the Cenobites, will be able to expose him to pleasures beyond his wildest imaginations. And that is definitely true, but not in the way he expected, and he eventually learns to regret that decision. The Cenobites do not distinguish between pleasure and pain. He starts off the book summoning them, and he gets captured by them, and then it flashes forward to modern day, where a family member of his named Rory and his wife Julia take over the house that he was living in, and all sorts of hell literally starts to break loose in this house. And it is just a creepy, creepy ride. I was on the edge of my seat. I read the book in 7 hours. It's 120 some pages. It only took me that long because I was doing other stuff in between, aka work. And man alive, this book was phenomenal. So I highly recommend that everyone check out The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. The next book I want to talk about is, at this point, kind of tied for me for Book of the Year. I don't think it's going to make Book of the Year, but it's a very, very close contender. And that is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This book blew me away. It is a book that ended up winning my challenge that I entitled Speed Dating My Unread Physical Books. It is a fantasy story that is labeled by most people as a YA fantasy. I would not label it YA fantasy. It kind of rides the fence between YA and adult. I tend to feel like it's more adult than it is YA, but that's just my personal opinion. And the reason I'm not doing a separate review for it is because it is part of a duology, and the ending of the book absolutely leaves you hanging for book 2. So I couldn't really do the story justice in a full review, so I'm just going to leave it there. But it follows Laszlo Strange. He is an orphan who has always heard tales of the unknown city, which everyone else calls Weep, but he is almost certain, based on all of his studies, that it was once known by a different name, but nobody can remember the name. Nobody can even speak the name if they get close to it because it's been eradicated from memory. And Laszlo works in the library, and he has studied and done research on this city. It has permeated the forefront of his imagination and his passions and his drive. At one point in the story, he gets the opportunity to visit this city, and his life is changed forever. And I literally mean his life is changed forever. I'm not going to go into any other details than that. I do want you to read the book. I highly, highly recommend it. I will do a full review once I have read the second book, which is Muse of Nightmares. And I'm hoping to read that really soon, maybe even before the end of the year if I get a chance to. Because I am just that eager to find out what happens. The prose is just phenomenal. The character work is phenomenal, and the atmosphere and the unique elements in the world are such that it just really sticks out as a wonderful work of fiction, and I couldn't recommend it enough. As I said, it is potentially tied for Book of the Year with the book I'm going to talk about next, and that is Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. The more I think about it, the more I think that Strange the Dreamer is not going to live up to being tied with Royal Assassin, because Royal Assassin absolutely blew past every expectation I would have had for that book. I read the first book, Assassin's Apprentice, a couple of months ago. It was great. I enjoyed it. It wasn't an absolute life-changing experience, but I really, really enjoyed the story. But Royal Assassin just took it up to the next step, next two steps, if that's possible. Royal Assassin follows our main character, Fitz Chivalry Farseer. He is, as the title says, the King's Assassin. It just continues following his journey, learning more about himself, learning more about his world, learning about the perils of the world as their kingdom continually has to fight against the Red Ship Raiders, who are basically pirates that are continually bombarding the coast and killing people and forging people, meaning they send the people back as emotional shells of the people that they once were. They basically lack all emotion, and they've just been turned into drones and zombies almost, if you will. But they're not zombies in a sense, because they're definitely still alive. They're not the Walking Dead, but they might as well be. And there's also internal strife in the kingdom, internal politics that are causing so much pain for Fitz personally, and for the man that he wants to be king, but is slowly being forced out, it seems. It is just a wild ride. The prose is just outstanding. I have never read prose that I like so much as I have reading Robin Hobb, and that's saying something, because I read a lot of magnificent prose, a lot of magnificent storytelling. Robin Hobb, is, for me, so far, is right up there with the greats like George R. R. Martin, and I'm absolutely loving it. So, Royal Assassin is by far a better book than Assassin's Apprentice, and that's saying a lot, because Assassin's Apprentice was very, very good. Fitz is continuing to be one of my favorite characters in fantasy fiction. And I'm looking forward eventually to reading Assassin's Quest, hopefully maybe next month if I can, and finishing that trilogy. And once I do that, I will put up a review for it. But in the meantime, you've got my quickie review here on the Book Review Blast, and you're hearing it from me right now. Royal Assassin will most likely be my book of the year. I'm not saying anything official yet. We've still got 2.5 months left in the year, right? But I'm really having a hard time expecting that any book will surpass Royal Assassin for me. We shall see. My favorite book of the year used to be The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. But both Strange the Dreamer and Royal Assassin blew past that by a mile. I'm going to stop gushing, guys, because I could go on and on. I hope you've enjoyed this book review blast. Let me know in the comments if you did, and let me know your thoughts on some of these books. Have you read them? Have they been on your list, but now you're ready to bump them up? Let me know. Until next time, make sure you are reading more books. I'll talk to you later.